not this false choice between money or struggle. I think honestly that's the easy button. That's someone who's only gone like level one. I want my kids to have a better life, but not so great that it ruins them. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to not give them an inheritance, and I'm going to force them to struggle, and I'm going to force them to struggle, hoping that they learn the same lessons that I did. So basically, I'm going to have my kids be carbon copies of me, and they're not going to be their own individual people. Now you've taken away their individualism, and you're forcing them to start over again, generation to generation. What we're not doing is passing the torch. What we're not doing is preparing that they can actually carry the family forward. And so when you say, I'm going to leave them nothing because I'm afraid it's going to ruin them, I'm going to challenge you. What have you done to prepare them to carry and handle a bigger life? Welcome to another episode of Wealthwise Banking. I'm Jeremy Huggins, here today with my host, Jason Sipple. How's it going, man?
I'm doing fantastic, Mr. Huggins. I have been moving around better than I was a week ago. I didn't have to even use my walker today. So, yep, that's right, brother. No walker, no holding on to the rails when I'm walking. Look out, world. So, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm doing great, man. I'm doing great. Happy to be back here with you. I know we're going to talk about some fun stuff. We're going to talk about some wealthy folks and I think some broken ass thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. And regarding the walker, it's not that Jason's old. If you didn't tune in last week, he just had hip surgery, which I guess is something that old people do. But
That's right, man. Hey, when you get my age, we start joking around in some of my friends groups, my chats from people I've known since childhood, and we're like, yeah, remember when our things are where we're going out, what are we doing for fun, how late we were out, all the stuff we were getting into, and now it's like we went to the chiropractor. I just had my hip replaced. I'm using a walker today. It's like we all sound ancient, bro. So
yeah,
anyhow, so for all of you change really does happen. That one thing that's guaranteed in life. And that's why we come back every week. We have these conversations because it's going to keep happening. And it just matters if you're prepared or not. So you want to get into this today? What are we talking
yeah,
about?
yeah. So I mean, today is based kind of on a conversation I had with a guy last week. You know, he's in Austin, Texas. His company is generating $275 million a year. So when I say like
Okay.
Jason and I work with a full spectrum of members, right? Everyone who's like literally trying to break money patterns and figure out the next step of life, all the way to someone having $275 million a year revenue. A lot of us have the same problems. And so my conversation with him literally went into like, hey, succession planning, like governance, like how do I ensure that my kids aren't going to be trust fund babies? Like that's what it was. And so it got me thinking about like my own experience and how I've talked about kind of wealth and planning and generational, planning over the years. And I come back to this time, like I was in the military. I served in special ops and combat, right? And what you find is that you don't rise to the occasion. You typically fall back on your preparation. And that's true in combat, but it's also true in business and true in investing as well. It's also true in families. And one of the most famous West Point graduates, Dwight D. Eisenhower, he had this saying where plans are worthless, but planning is everything. And what that means is your life will change, markets change, right? People's change, and your family structures tend to change. And everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face, right? That's Mike Tyson. That's his,
Yeah, yeah. I was gonna say, yeah, I remember when Dwight and I talked about that. No, just kidding. When we talked about that, not everything you can be planned. You got to have a plan, man. You got to have a plan.
yeah.
Hey, this is like this right here is something like our chief master nary, right? Our instructor for martial arts. He says the same thing. I was like, hey, sir, I was gonna go do this race. I really haven't been swimming, running, or anything. He's like, no, he's like, you want to go and fight a cage match or something if you're not training. You're gonna fall to your level of training always. Like just because you've done something before doesn't mean you're still able to do it. So I want people to think about that. So just because you know something, just because you've done something before, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're ready if you don't continuously, persistently, consistently keep doing the thing. And that's a lot of what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah. And to be very clear, like you don't have to be perfect. What we're trying to do is just prepare, right? Preparation is not about perfection. Preparation is really about reducing uncertainty. But what surprises me, Jason, is that when you're working with a lot of families, especially like wealthy families, how many successful families do the exact opposite in their own family? Like they'll look in and they'll prepare for business, they'll prepare in their investments, they'll implement like crazy tax strategies, right? They'll prepare for opportunities, but how much of them actually prepare for their family to inherit responsibility? And that's where they start getting that fear of, hey, I have all these assets. We're doing it tax free. We're doing all the cool things,
Yep.
but I'm afraid that my kids aren't going to be ready to carry on this responsibility. All right. So preparation, again, it's not about being perfect. What we want to do is just start having the conversation. So how do you have these conversations?
No, and what you're sharing right here is great because I think a lot of times when I'm talking to different fathers, different families, different very successful people, what really comes up a lot is, well, I had a struggle and I had to do these hard things to get here, and my kids don't seem interested in it, right? My kids don't seem interested. They're not really paying attention to what I'm doing. They're not interested in the business. They're not interested in the strategies I'm learning. They're not interested. So how do I get them interested? And I think this is where this is going to be an excellent listen for anybody who is having any of those same thoughts. Because now we're going to have the closer you get to things, whether it's your health, your money, your religion, your spirituality, whatever it is, your relationship, your communication, you have to get closer to the thing. And if you keep the thing far away and you think it's over there and it's not your responsibility, this is what we're going to be talking about, right? So,
Yeah, and before you tune out, like if you think this is only a rich person problem, you're obviously here because you're trying to create, keep, and multiply. You're trying to make a better world for yourself. These same lessons apply. And in fact, you'll probably be further ahead if you implement this now rather than waiting until you quote unquote made it. Because
yeah.
a lot of like my rebuttal to that is, hey, I'll wait until I'm wealthy, but success creates the illusion that there's going to be more time. And my rebuttal to this is often, well, what happens if it works, right? What happens if you actually create the life that you want and you have the house and the lifestyle and you're doing all the great things? What happens next, right? What if your kids are in better schools? Your kids have more connections. You're looking at more options and optionality in your life, more freedom, more financial freedom, but also more time to do things that you want. What happens if it all works? What happens if you actually are successful? What we need to understand here is that opportunity doesn't automatically mean better life. A lot of people think, oh, I'm going to equate the two. I want a better life, but we never sit down to define what is better life mean. And then we look at, oh, well, it means more
Mm.
opportunity, but opportunity in and of itself doesn't necessarily mean better life. Opportunity could just mean bigger problems. Think about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. And then usually bigger problems, bigger opportunity, more things just means more busyness, more responsibility, more, right? It's more of everything that's already happening because every day you're going to have problems. Things are not going to go your way. You're going to have struggles. You're going to have, if you're in a business owner, you're going to have an employee that doesn't show up. You're going to have a contract that ends. You're going to have something that happens every day. It's going to happen with your kids. It's going to happen with your business. It's going to happen with your life. It is always going to happen where somebody like Mike Tyson said, you're going to feel like you're prepared and then you're going to get punched in the face. And how are you going to react in that moment? So we don't want you feeling like you're getting punched in the face all the time without having a plan. So what we want to talk about today is just how do you start knowing that this is going to happen and there isn't going to be a perfect time, but when's a better time than now?
Yeah. And what I'm finding when we're having these sort of conversations with folks of all income levels, a routine thing, like I'm not a father, but you are, Jason. And I imagine you want your kids to have a better life than you did. And I imagine that you're not going to argue with that, would you?
No, no, I'm not going to argue with that. And it's I love to say it's easy to say that, but to do something about it. Today I got called out on some of my BS. It's like, hey, you've created this, this, and this, but when's the last time we stopped on a Saturday and we sat down and really started talking about the things that we've established that are on our whiteboards? Like, how often are we following up and doing the things? So, even me who thinks about this constantly, talks to other fathers about this, leads this, I'm not perfect doing it. I got called out today, Jeremy, doing exactly that. So, I mean, it's fair though. And I said, you know what? You're right. I'm wrong. You're right. Let's do that.
Yeah, so on the journey of creating a better life for your kids, we're going and we're creating that opportunity. But then what starts to think as you're on this road to success and you're actually doing the things and you're achieving that life that you want, what's one of those other fears that you might start having in your life, Jason? Like the one that I can consistently see is what if it ruins them? And that's where we go back to that trust
Yeah.
fund thing that we started with. What if everything that I'm building to give them a better life actually is what ruins them in the end.
I've seen it. I've seen that pattern in my with my wife's life, right? I've seen that pattern come from multiple generations of wealth, of land ownership, of business ownership, and people just waiting for inheritances. So like that's a true concern because like, oh, I don't have to do anything because when grandpa passes away, I'm going to inherit millions of dollars, land, businesses, and everything else, and it's going to be fine. And then there's no structure around it because there's been no conversation. There's the expectations you're going to receive something. So I think they refer to that as like a trust fund baby. Like,
Yeah.
right. And there wasn't necessarily a trust fund in that instance, but I've seen that go in the wrong direction. So like my concern, because that's not part of my life. Like that's never been a concern with anything with our family and our multiple family legacy. But now it's two things. It's one, what happens when I'm not here? Like, how will people know what to do? That's a big one that's been keeping me up, and that's why we have a lot of the conversations we have, Jeremy, and why we're doing this episode. And the other one is exactly what you said. How will they know what to do when I'm not here? How can
Yeah.
I make sure that it doesn't ruin their life? It just makes their life better.
Well, you're not going through life creating all this opportunity for them to become a passenger.
Yeah. Yeah. When they tell me things like, oh, we're rich, I'm like, no, no, I'm rich. You you have whatever you have and you that you've earned, right? Like you still got to earn all this stuff. That's what we're talking about. So
Yeah, a lot of what you're finding here, it truly isn't, it's not a money problem, it's not a resources problem. I think what we're getting at is it's a maturity problem, right? It's a
yes.
responsibility problem. But if you take it as one step back, if you're taking extreme ownership of this, it's truly a preparation problem. That's what we're looking at. The fear that money could outpace maturity, yeah, that's potential, right?
Yeah.
Opportunity could arrive for some people a little bit too soon if they're not mature to take it on. And a lot of those resources that they're going to inherit, it could magnify existing weaknesses in their character because they don't have the maturity that's there. So how do we prepare them ahead of time? And I'll go ahead and tell you, billionaires worry about this, right? Like this is an all spectrum, but if we're looking at, I think some of the best examples, Warren Buffett's got a fantastic quote that comes on this, and it's he wants to leave his children enough so they can do anything, but not so much that they can do nothing. And so, effectively, what Warren Buffett is saying is, I want to help them. I just don't want to remove their drive or their ambition. And then you got someone that's like Kevin O'Leary on Shark Tank, right? Mr. Wonderful.
Hmm.
Very different personality, very hard nose. What does he do? Well, he looks at trying to provide his kids education and opportunity, but he doesn't want his success to become their plan. Think about that for a moment.
Yeah.
He's here, he's a billionaire, he's Mr. Wonderful, he's on Shark Tank. He and Warren Buffett have the exact same fear. They don't want their children to become dependent on them, where their success, their internal success, what they've done, what they've built, what they've multiplied, becomes their children's fallback plan. So, how do you end up teaching responsibility and maturity? It goes back to preparation. That's what we're doing.
I think it goes back to it's not just preparation, it's that bigger vision that they both have. Right? There has to be a bigger vision in both of those households, right? The Buffett household, the O'Leary household. There has to be a bigger vision, a plan of where the family's going. And so, like, what do they believe in? What are they living by? What are they driven by? Because the truth is all of our kids are different. Like my kids are so different. Like complete, like one reads a book every day. The other one, if he never read a book in his whole life, he'd be fine with it. Like honestly, like they're just completely different. I'm not teasing one or the other. It's just we have different personalities. You and I have completely different personalities, right? So like everybody has different acumen, different maturity levels, different things. So you don't know what we don't know is what is their genius level? What are they going to be passionate about? Right? Like when I go back to Chief Master again, it's like God's great. Every day I wake up and I wear pajamas. I get paid to do it. Right? Teaching martial arts. So and I used to bother me, Jeremy. I know I've maybe said this before, but that used to bother me because when you have broke patterns about money and things and you haven't been taught these things, you think, oh, I have to go figure out how to trade my time for money, not what am I passionate about? What do I love to do? What can I go do more of? And then money's not a hindrance to go do those things because then ultimately you become super successful because you put so much time and energy into that thing.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, well, what we're talking about is a preparation, but a lot of families, Jason, will start thinking like, well, I've got really
Hmm.
two options. I've got money where I can give them resources, or I can force them to struggle. And then when you have that and you're dealing with that dichotomy here, it's like, all right, do I leave money and do I help them? Do I give them opportunity? Do I make their life easier? But then that gets back to, well, am I making them entitled? So what do? Now you go to the other end of the spectrum where you leave less or you really say nothing. A lot of people start avoiding the conversation.
Yeah.
And a lot of that, if you kind of look back at your own life here, you can say a lot of the hardest things in my life helped shape me, right? The challenges that I went through, they taught me something. Going through lean years, COVID, right? How I responded during certain financial crises, those things shape the way that I think, the way that I interact with the world. And it can start feeling like very familiar. And I kind of, for some reason, I think back to like the American dream. A lot of people kind of got on this big wooden boat to go and sail across an ocean to a new world. And what they do, they left behind their family, their language, their comfort. All of that takes grit and courage. It helped define the American spirit. But if we're looking at what it is they did, they actually sacrificed their comfort level. And what they're doing is they didn't know whether or not that was going to pay off. So they thought that that struggle was going to be a price that they were willing to pay. But
Yeah.
how do you pass that on, like generationally? I think that it's not a money issue, and I don't think it's a struggle issue. Because if it was struggle, let's say that let's look at that for a moment. If it was struggle in and of itself, right? That would mean that every struggling family produces great leaders. And we know that that's not true. So it can't be struggle. So what is it actually? Struggle is what helped them or forced them to develop certain character traits. And that's what they're hoping that their kids are going to inherit. They're hoping their kids are going to inherit discipline, courage, right? Resilience, decision making, responsibility. What they don't want is pain and suffering. So it's not struggle. They shouldn't be inheriting struggle. What you're hoping is that they're going to inherit the same lessons that you learned. And honestly, that's unfair to them because now you're basically looking at their life through your lens. And that's not fair to your children. So you're kind of
And you're trying to
yeah.
protect your and in that what you just said, they're trying to protect, like what I'm hearing is you're trying to protect, or that person is trying to protect their kid from going through the same pain that made them who they are. And I mean, you're going through it right now. I'm going through it right now. There is no growth without pain and struggle. And it's just how do you look at that pain and struggle? When you start normal, Patty, I used to say this to Connor a lot because I heard the woman who founded Spanx. Her name's escaping me at the moment. It's
Blakely.
Sarah Blakely. And she would talk about her at the dinner table. She would come home and her dad would say, "What'd you fail at today?" And
Mhm.
they would celebrate together. And so for her, that just became like, "Oh, that's a normal thing. I failed today. I learned something. I learned the lesson. I'm not going to do that again. I'm going to move forward." And so I started looking how to implement that in our household. Like, what was hard today? How did you handle it? What did you not do well in? Versus like, "Oh, look how great you are, how smart you are. You're doing everything right." Because then you're building someone that doesn't have resilience, right? The struggle, the resilience, the willingness. And Jeremy, I struggle with this. Like, this is something for me where I know if I went and fell on my face more and maybe messed up more in webinars and all the things we do, all the teaching we do, got on stage more, um, I want things to go really well. And so I prepare a lot. But honestly, the biggest lessons are when things don't go well.
Well, I think that a lot of folks in this idea that they're going to leave less for their family, and this is, I kind of hear, honestly, a little bit of the same pattern from you right now as I'm hearing from some of these wealthier people, where they start believing that struggle is a system,
Yeah.
where their kids should struggle. And again, I'm going to push back on you because I don't think that what you're trying to do is implement or inflict pain on your kids because you're hoping that they're going to learn the same lessons as you,
No,
right?
no, no. That's not what I'm saying. All I'm saying is I want them to grow and be okay with making mistakes because in the mistakes is where you move forward. But it's in the conversation around what did you learn from that mistake? See, nothing bad happened. Like life did end. Did you die? Like the t-shirt, but did you die? That's not what. So I'm not saying they need to struggle to be successful. I'm saying that there is no growth without struggle. But that's not the system. But the system is making it okay and normal for them to be able to struggle. So I don't want to throw us off. Like I believe they have to be have a plan. I just don't want them to feel bad about making a mistake and be like, oh, I don't want to ever do that again because I wasn't good at it. Well, what if that's something you're passionate about? Make the mistake again. Like Hunter just built his computer, did it all. It's amazing, right? We've talked about this in another episode, and it didn't work at first. The fan wasn't turning on. He had to bring someone, ask for help, and then had to figure out what he did wrong. And it's like, okay, look, you did 80% of it. You didn't
Mhm.
get 100% there. So next time you'll do a little bit better, right? That's what I'm talking about. Like there's a lesson in making mistakes. That makes
Yeah.
makes sense.
No, it does. But forcing your kids to struggle also doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to learn the same lessons that you did. And I think that's
Okay,
where we
correct.
start having that conversation where people get fearful that if their kids don't struggle, they will
Mm.
become entitled. And if their kids don't struggle, they will end up trust fund babies at the end of the day. What I'm saying is it's really the discipline, the responsibility, the courage that they have, those lessons that you want them to inherit. It's not the actual struggle itself. So, how do you implement those things without forcing your kids to inflict pain and suffering on them, right? Because all right, here's an example. You have two kids, we'll call it Susie and John. All right. They inherit the exact same amount of money, exact same trusts, very similar family backgrounds. Um, so you got Susie over here, and she inherits this trust, and she's got a couple $1 million, and she goes out and she does great things with it. All right. She's improving her community. She's actually multiplying the family foundation. She's giving out the charity. She's making everything better around her. And then you got John, who's living off of it. He's become dependent off of it. And he thinks the money was actually the destination. Money in and of itself, the trust in and of itself wasn't the problem. Like one of them turned out really, really great. And then you got John over here just turned out like, a, a dimwit at the end of the day. It
Parable of
wasn't,
the talents. John went and buried the money in the sand, and right, and Susie went out and 10x'd it.
yeah. So then why is it that so many families, they're looking at money as being the actual problem and then saying, well, I want my kids to have a better life, right? I want them to have a better life, but it can't be so great that they become slaves to money. They can't be dependent on it. And so what I'm going to do is I want them to have a better life while I'm here, but I'm going to leave them nothing in the end. That's
I
self.
Man, when I that gets me fired up, man. I've had that conversation with a couple people. And I'm almost just told them like, look, I just don't want to work with you. If that's what you believe and that's what you think, I'm sorry. That does not make sense to me, Jeremy. Like that statement right there, that hurts me. I'm like, that is selfish. It doesn't make sense. So you want the person that you love most in this life to be left nothing because you were left nothing. Like, so you're going to keep repeating that pattern of someone didn't leave you anything. And you're like, you find a way to make that okay at the end of the day. No, like my goal is to make sure that my kids aren't starting where I started. They start ahead of where I started, but they also have, like you said, struggle is not a system. I think you said that, right? Struggle is not a system. So how do we actually start systematizing and having conversations and getting closer to the things that actually are a system for them?
Yeah. Well, you look at how businesses even do this. Like every successful business actually starts preparing ahead of time. Okay. Think about it. If a founder of a business is going to step away, do they hand them the keys to the business the day that they leave? Because that's typically what the succession plan is for a lot of families. They don't
Yep.
prepare ahead of time.
Yes.
Okay. People are brought in ahead of time. Responsibilities are being shared. Judgment is being developed. That's part of that preparation. But what you'll find is a lot of families will step back and they'll say, hey, we're not going to talk about money. We're not going to talk about, I'm afraid that you're going to become like a trust fund baby. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to leave you nothing, but you can enjoy the life while I'm here with you. I want to make this very clear. Inheritance is not about transferring ownership. Leadership is about transferring judgment. All right. One of those two things can happen with a signature, and the other one actually takes time. Inheritance, that's where you literally transfer ownership with the stroke of a pen. But with leadership, that's what you truly want your kids to do. You're going to take time to develop leaders, ideally, leaders of character, right? So, what are they learning while you're still here? What are they watching? What I typically find is we don't step back and look at what is being transferred. We think assets are the only thing that's being transferred. But even if you sit silent, people are learning. And I want you to think about like your own money situation, right? What did your family teach you about money? Not directly, like not the conversations, the habits around money, their patterns around money. What was being transferred? Because even if you sit back as a silent observer in your own life, your kids are still going to inherit something.
That silence is deafening. That silence is deafening. That is the loudest thing that could happen is the folks, the people, the families that don't talk about money, that don't talk about the things that are actually important in your life and the day-to-day things, right? We said we were going to talk about from the beginning at Wealthwise. We're going to talk about politics, sex, religion, money, like whatever people don't want to talk about, we're okay talking about. I mean, we're focused typically on the money aspect of things, but that's just because that, I mean, was who was it that said money isn't the most important thing in the world, but it's right up there with oxygen? I think it was Zig Ziglar, right? So, like that, if you don't talk about money, and I think I'm getting a little fired up with this because that wasn't talked about in my house. We talked about this, I think, at the end of the last episode, right? That you said that wasn't talked about in your house either. Some of my earliest memories are listening, sitting on the steps, listening to my mom and dad argue about someone not paying my father for the water wells that he drilled. And in that moment, money became scary and entrepreneurship became something I didn't want to do because if people weren't going to pay my dad, 46 years, man, that was my pattern. From 40 years, 6 to 46. So that's how I feel about not talking about this stuff. You have to be able to talk about it.
Yeah. I recognize that a lot of people aren't doing it though, Jason. I want to give them a little bit of a reprieve here. To be honest, what's happening? Because if they're on this journey of wealth development and trying to make a world a better place, they actually are trying to build a better world, which means they're active. They're
Yeah.
building, they're creating, they're multiplying, right? Life kind of gets in the way. What we're not doing is setting clear priorities and we're not setting clear goals about what is getting transferred because the goal here is to make sure that your family doesn't actually have to guess about what is important to you, what matters most. Right. So if we're looking at assets, all right, this asset gets touched, that one gets sold. This person, we maintain these relationships with these people. This is our family values. This is what we stand for. Right. So that's what we're looking at. At the end of the day, we're not choosing between money or direction. What we're trying to do is figure out, are my kids becoming the type of person who can actually handle a bigger life, bigger decisions, responsibilities, opportunities, right? There's not this false choice between money or struggle. I think honestly, that's the easy button. That's someone who's only gone like level one. I want my kids to have a better life, but not so great that it ruins them. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to not give them an inheritance, and I'm going to force them to struggle, and I'm going to force them to struggle, hoping that they learn the same lessons that I did. So basically, I'm going to have my kids be carbon copies of me, and they're not going to be their own individual people. Now you've taken away their individualism, and you're forcing them to start over again, generationally, generationally. What we're not doing is passing the torch. What we're not doing is preparing that they can actually carry the family forward. And so when you say, I'm going to leave them nothing because I'm afraid it's going to ruin them, I'm going to challenge you. What have you done to prepare them to carry and handle a bigger life? That's hard. That's harder for a lot of people because now they have to recognize and look in the mirror. Oh, crap. It's not about my kids. This is actually is about how I'm preparing. What am I doing to prepare?
And this is to everyone we're listening, well said. Like it is about being a builder, but instead of being a builder out in the community, out in your business first, you're a builder and leader in your home.
Yeah. What?
You're a builder and a lead. Like if the most important people to you in your life are your spouse, your family, your siblings, then does your calendar reflect that? Does your actions reflect that? Does your family know what's most important? And hopefully they do. A lot of you, we've talked to you that you do, but the ones that don't, this is the conversations that you start. It has to come out of your head and it has to go somewhere.
Mhm.
Like all the things you want and desire, and you're thinking about, and you want, oh, I want my kid, like I pray with Connor, kind, curious, courageous every night. You're kind, you're curious, you're courageous. Thank God you're kind, you're curious, you're courageous. Because I think those three traits, Jeremy, I know discipline's probably, you have Jocko talking about discipline is basically everything. Discipline is the way, but without being kind, right? Because you want to treat others the way you want to be treated. Without being curious, you don't ever go and really explore things. You just take things at face value. And the courage to speak up or to do the things that others won't do. Like that's really what I want. Like I want those things. And then you talk about them and you do this, right? And so again, being a leader at home might be the hardest thing you ever do.
Yeah, there's no point in going out and creating something and building something meaningful just to force your loved ones to start over from scratch. All right. That at the end of the day, that's not what you truly want. And if it is something that you want, you're probably just not part of our community, right?
Yeah.
And that's fine.
That's
Like you
yeah, I
can
was gonna
have
say that's okay. I just
you can have a disagreement with it, and that's fine. All right. But what I think that
I'd
is,
actually like to talk to that person. I'd really like to understand that at a deeper level because I'd like to be able to see if there was really a pattern there or something that hurt them at some point that made them think that way. Like I'd love to have that conversation. So if you're that person, reach out to us too. But yeah, that's not the person I'm looking to build our community with.
yeah, no, our folks, they look at being able to pass on opportunity and judgment, resources and responsibility, assets and understanding, because the true inheritance isn't the asset itself, it's the leadership, it's the direction behind it, right? So how do you intentionally pass that forward? You know, you kind of talked a little bit about being intentional, prioritizing with your family. Hey, let me give you some pushback here. What about our members who have families who are already grown? All right. Or, hey, Jeremy, I'm too busy. Hey, my kids already have their own kids. How do you start getting intentional where they feel as though it's not too late? Fortunately, this is not a money discussion. Let me be very clear. Let's start with where you are. Because if you're having that pushback right now, that internal dialogue of, hey, it's already too late. My kids are already grown. They have their own lives. I should have started this years ago. I'm going to tell you, it's not too late. You're still
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
So what do you do? Right? What you don't, let's start with what you don't do. What you don't do is gather everyone around a table, open up a folder, and start reading a will early. That's not what you do. And say, hey, Susan, you're going to go get this, and little Johnny, you're going to get that. Like nobody wants that conversation. What we need to start doing is having a conversation about what matters. What what does responsibility actually look like, right? Because if we can handle responsibility, then distribution works itself out. And that's where we start layering things in, right? When we start building out our frameworks, we talk a lot about the policies here, but the trust that we build actually means something. And we are putting in specific provisions, we're passing on direction, right? That's building family governance, that's building succession planning, that's preparing the next generation. That's doing what every successful business out there is already doing. You don't show up on the first day of the job saying, figure it out. And now you're leading the entire family. And what you hope you, part of that plan is, hopefully you're not passing on struggle in the process, hoping that they'll learn the same lessons. Just meet them where you are today. What does your family believe in? What are our values? What is our relationship with money? What do we want our family name to mean? What do we want to pass
Yeah,
forward?
what's it mean to be a Huggins? What's it mean to be a Sipple? What's it mean to be your last name? What do you stand for? What do you stand against? Where are you going as a family? Where are you going to be in 100 years? Like start imagining some of those things. An exercise I like to do, Jeremy said, just, close your eyes. I'm not going to go through right now the whole thing, but close your eyes. It's 100 years from now. On the wall, there's a oil painting of you in the center of your family. You're no longer here, but you've got your kids, your great grandchildren, and their children. You got multiple generations. It's 100 years. You're no longer here. They're all still gathering. They're talking about what it means to be a Sipple, what it means to have this kind of life. And they're raising a glass to you because they're grateful for your thinking. They're grateful that you had the wherewithal to have these conversations, to start setting up the systems and processes, to start building a vision, and to start teaching every single generation what it means. What do we stand for? What do we stand against? Where are we going?
So you notice the change right there, though? Like we weren't talking about money. You know what we started with? We started with a story. And I would encourage our members, start there.
Yeah.
Start with stories, start with values. Okay. I'm not telling you to go out and create a mission statement. What I'm saying is just start the dialogue. Because when you actually do that, you're creating structure. And that structure now, that's where your mission kind of lives in your family, when you're putting that structure around it. Like we think like structure, oh, ones and zeros, engineering, this is hard. It's not. It literally just starts with a story. It starts
Right.
with a story about what's important and probably why it's important. Because now what you're doing when you start telling the why behind things, you're no longer hoping that struggle is going to teach the same lessons. You're actually intentionally teaching lessons. Hey, we do this because of this.
Because it means this. What's really interesting is this is kind of one of the things that started our journey. I was in a parents coaching group and they said, let's take some time, let's go sit and talk about the stories that your family tells on holidays when you guys get together. Like, what do you say about grandpa? What do you say about grandma, your uncles, your aunts, your dad, your mom? Like, what are the stories and what were the meanings of the stories? Because the truth is, with any story, Jeremy, that was written, like there are stories about my grandfather riding his Harley with a side cart from New Jersey out to work on the big road project out in Oregon, right? And took at the time it wasn't his wife, but my grandmother's brother, Boots, with him. And so in my mind, here's my grandfather who's this pioneer who's willing to do whatever it takes to ride a motorcycle all across the country that's not even built yet back in the 20s, right? And you start telling those stories and you start it gives you a vision. And the power of the stories is you can always recreate what the meaning is to serve what your future is. Dr. Ben Hardy talks about this stuff all the time. Like your past is one of the most powerful tools you have, and the stories you tell will give you the values and the vision, and you can actually take them and prescribe a different meaning to them by just thinking about it differently.
Yeah. To that point, it does have to get written though, right?
Yes.
Because if it only lives in your head, now people are wondering like, oh, well, what would mom have wanted? Or hey, like what did dad like think about this?
Yep.
It does need to be written. And this goes back into why you and I emphasize the family constitution.
Yes.
It's why we start with a lot of the framework of what we do starts with a family constitution. I know that this is called wealthwise banking. You think it's about money, it's not,
It's
right?
not.
Money is not the end goal here. It truly isn't. What we do is we get very clear about your values and priorities. The output of that is a family constitution. We typically then put structure around that, a legal framework. Sometimes that's LLC, sometimes that's entity, sometimes that's trust. The policies that we often talk about, we talk about them because it's what you ask us to talk about. But truly, that's just the resources behind it.
It's
Because
a tool.
you can, yeah, you can have, like, the way I like to think about it is like, you can have your values and priorities written down. You can have your family constitution. Okay. You can have the trust and the governance around it. Those are really good conversations. How do you enforce them? Well, you need a resource to show up. That's the policies. And we just happen to build policies with living benefits. So that way you can actually benefit from them and help your family teach financial IQ while you're here, to teach responsibility, to help prepare them, right? That's what we're doing. So the
And to
process
show the
is legal.
family and to show the family why we actually do what we're doing with this system of family banking and what it means and how it works. And then, like you just said, once it's written down, you have your constitution and you have the made it legal to carry on from generation to generation when you're no longer here. But it's about the conversations and at home, Jeremy. Like it really truly is. That's why I got called out today. Back to that. Like I got called out because as much as we have put in place, there's always room to be more intentional, more involved. Like when we think, hey, we have to do another episode, we have to do this. No, I have to have another conversation with Connor, Diego, and Patty. And then I'll start getting my father, my mother involved, right? Because like all of those generational things, you start aligning everybody because someone has to lead. And then you want to prepare the next generation to lead. And you do that by writing it down, having conversations about it.
Yeah. Everything gets a lot easier when you have clarity, doesn't it?
Yes. Way. Everything starts actually moving forward, and you kind of think it's magic, and you're like, wait, how has all this change happened in this short period of time? Like, I wanted this to happen for decades, and now in 2 years, like a lot of the things I thought weren't possible are now possible. And you wonder how it happened. Well, because you wrote it down, you talked about it, and you went and did something about it.
Yeah. So what separates us from, I would say, a lot of other folks? When you book a call with Jason or myself, the first thing that we do is we get really clear about what's important to you. And then we look at your entire framework, right? So what I find is that a lot of our members will come in with pieces. What does that mean? I have an account over here. I may already have insurance. Hey, I may have a trust. Okay. I set up this plan for these reasons. But when you did all of this over time, it's likely that no one came together and looked at the entire picture. How does it all work together? Right? You have all these little pieces and parts, and that's well and good, but how do they actually work as one system? So when you end up working with Jason and myself, the first thing we do is we get really clear about what it is you're trying to do. Where are you today? Where do you want to be in the future? Where do you want your family to be beyond you? Okay. We're thinking like generation one, two, three, and beyond. Once we help you build that clarity, we start looking at the pieces you already have in place. Once we understand what you've already built, now we can help you strengthen certain portions of your foundation. Once you have a very strong, stable foundation, you can build as high and as aggressive and as beautiful as you want. Nobody looks and walks into a gorgeous hotel and looks at the foundation. That's what Jason and I build. We build strong foundations. So that way, the rest of your plan is actually supported.
Beautifully said. And how do people find us, Jeremy, to make sure that we can go ahead and have that conversation and start setting that intentionality? Because struggle is not a system.
Yeah, well, you just go to wealthwisebanking.com. You can book an appointment there. We'll start looking again at what's important to you, look at your structure, look at the systems that you already have in place, figure out where, hey, if you need help setting up a trust, guess what? We got folks for that, right? If you need help, even with your taxes, if you need help, like literally figuring out tax strategy, not like, oh, I got a box of receipts, tax strategy, we got people for that. What's nice is Jason and I are really well connected in the community with other people, other professionals. So it's an ecosystem. That's what I love about what we build over Wealthwise Banking is inside of our network, we've met so many cool people that we can do face-to-face referrals. Hey, Jeremy, I want to learn more about a dynasty trust. Oh, okay, cool. Let's talk about a dynasty trust and whether or not that fits. Hey, Jeremy, I want to hear more about these pension plans. Like, tell me about that. Hey, cool. We've got members who do that. Let me introduce you to someone. Hey, Jeremy, what are these policies you keep talking about? Like, how the hell did you collect all these rentals and they're funded through life insurance? How the hell did you do that? Well, let's talk about that. Before we have any of those conversations, we will talk about what's important to you. We'll go all the way back to values and priorities. We'll get clear about that because a lot of these pieces, they probably don't matter depending on where you want to go in the future. So I'm not going to recommend something or someone else unless we get very clear about what's important to you up front.
Yeah. And if you're, I know the builder's sitting here thinking that, hey, this sounds like something I want to do. So go to wealthwisebanking.com, book the call with us. We'll meet you exactly where you're at. We say it all the time. We'll meet you where you're at. We want to know where you're going and we'll show you the steps, the systems and the processes you need to get there. Because Jeremy, we're already in banking.
Just not the banker yet.
Be blessed, everyone. We'll see you in the next episode. Thanks for joining us on Wealthwise Banking. If today's episode inspired you, please subscribe, leave a review, and give us a like. It's a simple way to help others discover these empowering strategies and join our community. Together, we're building a network of people who believe financial freedom is within everyone's reach. Remember, financial independence is about making every dollar work for you, one step at a time. Until next time, stay inspired, stay in control, and keep building your legacy the wise way.